So, Jim, did you crash once? Was another question. No, I didn't crash. It was a controlled landing. That was the other aeroplane. I did write it on Facebook, but it was I was flying to Compton Abbas, so I was flying over Stony Cross, and that little two-stroke engine. Remember I said about that? I'm a bit OCD, if you know me. I was always fanatical about getting the oil right, and everything was checked, and it was a low hours engine. It didn't need any major work or anything for another 150 hours. You know, it was all tip top. Anyway, flying over there, and it was a bit of a bumpy day, and not a problem. Fine, carry on. Below 2,000 feet, because above 2,000 you have to speak to Solent, and I didn't want to, so listen in, but you just fly below 2,000 or over that area, you're fine. And it started to sort of lose power, so I thought, that's weird. Carb ice, probably. I've had that before. So give it a couple of revs, and I'll see if it goes. Didn't go, and then for the first time ever, because you don't do it when you're learning, you don't actually turn the engine off. He sort of cuts the throttle, and you're not allowed to touch it, and you've got to get out of the situation. That's what happens when you learn. But this time, yeah, engine stopped, so my bum went funny, and then only momentarily, and then the prop stopped, and I thought, that's weird. Turned the key, started, and it started up fine. I thought, it's carb ice, and I thought, do you know what? I'm gonna need to turn back anyway. So turned. By this time, I was about, I don't know, 1,500 feet or something like that. So I climbed, or attempted to climb, and I got up to about 1,700, and then it did it again. It stopped. This time it stopped in that position, and turned the key. It wouldn't turn. It wouldn't do anything. I thought, oh, right. So you've got to do something. You can't not do anything. You've got to fly it until you hit the floor. So you've got to do something. And you know, Star Wars, when you hear Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi and they're talking, it's a bit like that with my flying instructor. So I didn't actually panic. I've had a more frightening experience driving a double-decker bus than I have flying that aeroplane, which is weird. So I was calm, nose down, kept the airspeed going, and looked for a spot to land. Not a lot of choice. I did find somewhere, but I was a bit too high, so side slipped in, cross controls, side slipped in to get lower, and then it's the New Forest, so it's like bits of field, and it's like shrubs and horses and donkeys and rabbits and people walking, all that kind of stuff. So I found a spot, and flared out, landed, and I thought, right, well, that's all right, but the hedge that's ahead of me says otherwise. You're going to write the aeroplane off, whatever. You're not going to get it through that gap there. You're going to rip the wings off. The nose wheel touched, turned, and just rolled to a halt. Absolutely nothing wrong with the airframe at all. Perfect. That was fine. Got out. You can move the propeller that much. That was it. And ended up, my mate from school, Danny Price, he came over on the next ferry, bless him, and brought my dad and a toolbox, and came over and with a low loader thing, transporter, because it has got wing fold on that, but you never use it. But I had to use it that day, so tried to drain the fuel out, undo loads of bits and pieces, and you can actually fold the wings around, and then folded it, and then got the ferry back. That was an expensive day, and then came back and then took it apart the following day, I believe. And what it was the thrust bearing. So on the rear cylinder, the thrust bearing had gone, so the piston wasn't running true. It was offset, and that had obviously, and it's a two-stroke, it's revving its tits off, and yeah, it just given up basically, and it had snapped. I've still got both bits. It snapped the con rod, and yeah, the piston, all bits of piston everywhere. It was a bit of a mess, and funnily enough, Rotax do a complete kit, because they don't have like a car. You got big end bearings. You can change the shells and all that sort of stuff. This is not like that. This is a small engine, and it's pressed in from the factory. So it's the crank and the rods are all pressed in, all fitted in, all the bearings and everything. So yeah, you had to get a whole new thing, and they sold the whole thing as a kit, which is weird. The rest of the engine was all right. We honed it out, and it was all fine. And I put it back together and started it up and run it in, and she's fine ever since. But it was a low hour engine. It was just Rotax. Yeah, don't buy a 2-stroke Rotax. Well, not to go in the air anyway. They're all right for jet skis. That's about it. And that is my story. So it was a controlled landing. That plane still lives. I put it on Facebook the other day. It lives. I sold it to a guy on the island, and then he never flew it, and then he sold it to a guy up north in Preston, Blackpool Way, somewhere like that. But yeah, it's still alive, that one. But yeah, nice little aeroplane, just a shit engine.